Here's Nadia.
Hello and welcome to It's a Woman's World. I'm Nadia Giordana. Co-hosting with me today is Uma Janga.
Thanks, nice to be here.
Nice to have you here. And Dr. Susan Strauss.
Hi, Nadia. Glad to be here with you again.
And our guest today is Colleen Baldrica. She's the author of the award-winning book, Tree-Spirited Woman, and she does a lot of exciting work in mentorship and other things, which she'll be telling us all about. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you, thank you. I look forward to talking to all of you.
Yeah,
Colleen,
we do too.
one of the things I wanted to start off with is you have an interesting heritage story. Tell us about that.
Well, my grandmother was Native American, and Grandma lived with me when I was growing up. She was part of she was born up in Menomin, White Earth Pembina Band, and I am a registered card-carrying voting member of White Earth. My grandmother and her sisters were all taken from their family, and they were sent originally down to Pipestone, to the boarding schools, to become Americanized.
They were taken from their family by the U.S. government?
Correct. Well, they were kind of given a choice, but really it wasn't much of a choice. We need them to go, is the way I understand it all. Grandma didn't talk much about it. All Grandma really ever told me is it was not a good place.
So she was one of those children that was removed. How long was she removed from her family?
When she went to Pipestone, it was for a few years, I believe. I don't know all the facts. I found out more after my mother had passed away, and I talked to one of my mother's cousins because they lived up in northern Minnesota, and so her mother told her, was my grandmother's sister, told her all the stories, where Grandma wouldn't. She just said it was not good and never said much. But my grandmother was a very positive, wonderful role model for me. She was the most significant female in my life.
So did she teach you about Native spirituality and pass on any, stories about growing up Native?
Not really. Because it was such a bad part of her life being in the boarding schools, she didn't talk about it.
Okay.
But as far as her spirituality, they were raised Catholic. And in the boarding schools, they were Catholic.
Okay.
But the Catholic religion was very important to my grandmother. But she also always said, God doesn't care where you go, just go. Whether it's in the woods, whether it's in another place, it's okay, God doesn't care. And so that was a very important thing that she gave to me.
Yeah.
But how did you feel when you heard all this? What was your first reaction?
I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about her story. And I think as I got older, she would have shared more if I really would have pushed. But as a teenager, you don't ask the
When
questions.
you're young, you don't
No,
ask those questions.
No.
She's the grandmother, you're the child, and you almost feel like she should volunteer,
Right.
and you don't have the bravery to ask the questions.
Exactly, especially when she said, those were not happy times.
Yeah.
But she had one picture, and she played basketball and I have it, it's a one picture, and it says 1917, white, it's W-E, and it's got there, and it's her basketball team. And
wow.
Yeah, and I used to laugh because grandmother was 4'9".
Oh!
and I went, Grandma. But she says, we were really good. So that was her pride, and that was the only thing she really talked about.
Can you tell us a little bit about your mentoring and who do you mentor? And is it based at all on some of the principles from your book? But just talk to us about that.
A lot of what it is because my book has done well. And people have asked me when I get calls about the writing process and about the marketing process. So I really, when I'm working with people, they'll say, well, how do you do this? How do you get the idea? And, think about Michelangelo. He said, every stone is a statue waiting to be become.
Yeah.
So it's like every part of clay is maybe a pot waiting to be thrown, or that blank piece of paper that once you take that pen and you start writing, you don't know what voice it's going to happen. And so I encourage the people to really listen to that voice within. Listen to the voice speaking, because when I was writing, I really believed that the voice would speak to me. I would wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, I have to write this down. And people that are writers, they will know what I am talking about. That voice comes. And sometimes you think your story is going to go off here and you're writing, and then all of a sudden it takes on a whole different trail, a whole different life, a whole different path.
That's really true. Whenever I always see the things and I want to write, but I don't know how to start though. But
think that's
I don't
the
know
hardest.
That's the hardest
Starting.
part. Okay, I want to write, but I don't know how to put the words together.
Oh,
It's
and that
really-
is, but you've got that blank canvas, that blank piece of paper. And once you just start and you just
Even if it's not perfect, I
It,
think
oh,
that's
no,
it.
it
Yeah.
does not have to be perfect.
Oh,
And
okay.
it doesn't even have to be, you can just be writing and you'll think you're going to go in this direction. And all of a sudden, once you are going, this voice or this something will happen and you will go, oh my gosh, I need to
has
go
a life
this
of its
way.
own, yeah.
And it takes on a life. It brings, it can be joyful, it can bring, some sadness, it can bring laughter. You don't know where it is going at the time of the beginning.
And Uma, sometimes when I write, I have a philosophy that I was taught in school. First get it down, then get it good. So I don't ever worry about it in the beginning. In
Exactly.
fact, sometimes I don't even have complete sentences. I just have captured certain thoughts or memories, and then I go back later. That works for me. Now, I know it doesn't work for everybody, but that works for me.
But that's good to know. But I've always been wondering, how they put these words together in a nice way,
hard.
efficient way like this. I don't think I can. I always thought, okay,
Oh, you can.
Oh, you can. If I think I can or I think I can't, you will be right. So always go with I can.
Yeah.
You can. And, it's such a powerful, powerful thing once you start. And I was not a writer. Okay. I was not a writer at all. And how my book came to be was totally because I
I'm
read a lot.
curious about how
that's
it
what
came
too,
to be.
yeah.
exactly.
Well, I was a young mom. I was a single mom, and I had started college. I was poor and I was broke, and I thought, I have to go to college. I don't know what to do. And I was struggling with my life. And I had met a Lakota medicine man by the name of Charlie, and Charlie was at the school.
And he was a real person.
And he was a real
was he
person.
also in your book, or?
No, I don't talk. No, I don't
Okay.
bring up. But Charlie was a real person.
He was a real person.
He was a real person. And Charlie and I talked a lot about the Native culture, about the spiritual aspect, about my grandmother, about the difference. And I really came to appreciate it. I went on and I was out in the woods by the college. And I was struggling, and I went out and I started to pray. I just was saying, what do I do with my life? Well, I believe that the trees spoke to me, and I believe I was spoken to at that moment. And I walked back in after about 25 minutes, an hour out there. I don't know how long I was. But I walked in and I told Charlie what happened. And he said, Colleen, that is so powerful. I am giving you the name. And he said it in Lakota. It meant tree-spirited woman.
And
Which
how do you say
became
it
the
in
name of your
Lakota?
book.
I do not know. It started, I don't know how to pronounce it, but
Okay.
he said it in there. And Tree-Spirited Woman became
Yeah.
the title of the book. And a few years later, I had a dream. And it was that someday I had to write this book. It would be called Tree-Spirited Woman. It would be between a young woman and an older woman. It would be in the style between Siddhartha and the prophet. It would all take place in the woods, but I had to grow into it. And it was about 13 years before I started it. I was not a writer. And it's only a book, and it took me about 8 years.
But it's been very well received.
It's been very well
And
received.
won a lot of awards.
It
Yes,
has.
congratulations on
Thank
that.
you, thank you.
And you say you're not a writer. Well, you
Well,
are now.
and people say, are you writing again? I write now, but I don't care if I publish. And that's the difference, I think, for me. But I do, sometimes I'll just sit down and I'll just write. And for me, my book is very little and it's broken down. I do much better when I can break it down into little specific topics.
And there are life lessons in that book. What would be like the greatest life lesson or the best received life lesson that's in that book?
Boy, I would say, letting go and trusting wherever you are. That is probably the biggest. I get letters and emails or notes, basically emails, but I would say at least 3 or 4 times a month from somebody who has read the book and thanking me for it. And it did just win the 2014 Living Now Evergreen Book Award
That's brand new, isn't it?
in the Women's Spirituality category.
Good for you.
So
Congratulations.
those are books that continue to make a difference over a lifetime.
Yes, they do.
So is there any quote that you are really keen for readers to absorb from your book? Is there anything?
Good question.
Every chapter has learning in it. I think I'm going to go with listening.
Okay.
Because the listening is a gift, and it is the greatest gift we can give anyone. It doesn't cost a penny, but it is the most valued gift anyone can receive.
And we learn so much when we're listening. That's true.
Exactly. And in the book, she talks about the gift of listening, and that it isn't just our words, but it is our actions, it is our tone, it is all of that. We are listening with our full bodies, with every aspect, and really hearing. And without listening, we gain nothing, and we can really not learn and go forward. So it's being open. So I think I would say the gift of listening in the book is where it really has to begin.
And that one character in your book, that's makes me think of your grandmother. So was that character somewhat based on the sense of your grandmother?
There's only two characters in the book, and tree-spirited woman and the young woman. The young woman is me. The tree-spirited woman is part of I believe, the spirit of my
not her in
grandmother.
real life,
No,
but,
it
yeah.
it really it reads like a memoir, but it is a work of fiction with a lot of truth. My grandmother it is her voice going through it, very, very much so. And I have some things that Grandma had said in there, but it is definitely where it begins. And tree-spirited woman, was she real? Oh yeah, was she real for me? You bet. And her voice would come. She would wake me. I would be waking up in the middle of the night because the voice would come. And as a writer, trust it. Trust it. You know, when you think, oh, this isn't anything, don't listen to your brain, your thought process. Listen to the voice and trust that and just write. Sometimes we let our cognitive intellect get too involved, and it really puts up our own barriers.
That's true. That's very true. Sometimes,
that's
that's where
very
I get that,
much.
okay, no, you cannot do this. Like, okay,
Yes.
it's not necessary. Something like that, it will stop you from going forward,
Right.
That's very true.
And we put up our own barriers.
Yes.
And so just do it. And whether it's picking up that paintbrush and wanting to start, always wanting to try to paint, do it.
And I read your book, and we're almost out of time, but I read the book, and it read so real. It read so real. I mean, you're immersed in the book, and it feels so good, so real. That's why I asked about the grandmother. In fact, when we first talked way back, I think I thought that it was a complete memoir, totally drawn from real life. So it was excellently done.
I look forward to reading it.
Thank you.
Colleen, thank you for being here today. It was great.